Hi, everyone. How are we all doing? It's so good to be here. Hello, everyone. How are we all doing? Okay, I can see that we are all doing fine. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Juliana Imam, and I'll be your anchor for today. I can see that some of our mentors are here already. I'd like to thank everyone for being here. Matt is here. Hi, Matt. Thank you so much for joining us and early. Thank you. I'm sure that the other mentors will also be here. But before we start, I'd like to welcome everyone to Gypsy Mentorship and Internship Program. We have several. We have where we train people on intellectual property, but this is for artificial intelligence. And today we'll be talking about artificial intelligence, governance, and ethics. And we have great minds to share with us today. Before we continue, I would like to talk more about who we are and what we do. So Gypsy Artificial Intelligence and Technology Mentorship and Internship Program is a quarterly program for students, young professionals, and enthusiasts across Africa. Mentees are afforded the opportunity to access valuable advice, trainings, network, mentorship, internship, discussion forums, industry updates, and resource materials from experienced mentors. This program seeks to encourage continuous training, development, and evolution in Africa and around the world. You can watch our videos by searching for Gypsy on YouTube and Facebook using the hashtag. You can also use the hashtag GypsyMIP. Our objectives are to provide easy access to quality professional guidance, training, and resource materials for students, young professionals, and enthusiasts in Africa to facilitate dialogue and network among experienced and less experienced practitioners and stakeholders, see to transform mentees into mentors and leaders for the next generation of mentees, and to facilitate further mentorship and internship, scholarships, and job placement for mentees. Also, I would like us to know that there is a provision for private mentorship with your favorite mentor. So if you see a particular mentor that you would like to have 30 minutes with, you can use this link bit.ly gypsypm to sign up for a private 30 minutes mentorship with them. And I'll just go ahead to read out the profiles of the mentors that we have for today. So we have, hold on. We have Matt Harvey. Matt Harvey is the head of AI law and partner at Gorling WLG UK LLP, advising on AI across all sectors. He is a co-editor of the Law of Artificial Intelligence Suite and Maxwell. He's a trusted intellectual property advisor, especially for clients with complex patent disputes, including SEP, FRAND, litigation. Legal 500 has described him as standout and absolutely superb for patent disputes. His cases have involved video compression, telecommunications, 2D, 3D, LTE, DSL, and other standards, aircraft design, software algorithm training, consumer share trading platforms, 3D modeling, consumer electronics, inkjet printers, location senses, and traffic analysis. He has extensive experience in healthcare and life science work, including monoclonal antibodies, biosimilars, toxins, medical device, and cosmetics. He has handled product clearances and disputes involving copyright, trademarks, designs, and confidential designs, confidential information for clients in the aerospace, retail, fashion, automotive, and financial services sector. He successfully defended the Kennedy Trust for rheumatology research in the UK first biosimilar dispute and helped with Fujifilm's Kiowa Kirin Biologics Co. Limited and the first UKRO declaration. Our second mentor for today is Kelly. Kelly Idenhen is an emerging technology thought leader, entrepreneur, AI researcher, and influencer for the digital innovation. He's passionate about the applications and impact of disruptive technologies for solving real-life problems faced by people, especially in underdeveloped countries. He's currently founder, LearnHub Africa, and the CEO of Linkrion Technology, where he consults for brands and helps them undergo the process of digital transformation when not fully immersed in research, speaking engagements, and technology-related projects. Kelly loves to spend his time on social impact projects, helping young people through digital skills programs, STEM education, and mentorship as a commitment to his mission of getting more people ready for a future that will be completely disrupted by technology. Also, we have with us Favor Borukini. She is a technology policy researcher with a law background from Nigeria. In her role as data and digital rights researcher with policy and Ugandan civil technology non-for-profit, she researches a number of knotty topics related to technology, facilitated violence against women, and the general impact of subsisting and emerging technologies on social justice and equity. She also works as a content writer with Ethical Intelligence and AI ethics consulting firm and various research groups on topics related to data protection, regulation, healthcare delivery, and is currently an affiliate with the Future Society. And last but not the least, our final mentor for today is Akin. Please hold on. Akin Ogunbede is an analyst / emerging tech lead with the Tech Hive Advisory with core competence in emerging technologies and tech policy. He has been engaged in the review of several legislative instruments with relevance to the Nigerian tech ecosystem, developing recommendations for the improvement. He has also worked on team projects covering internet infrastructure in Africa and the impact of artificial intelligence on the rights to privacy globally, and has been published by the UN and WIPO in this respect. He is steadily acquiring knowledge and competencies with a focus on the AI ethics and governance space. So I'd like to welcome everyone and thank us for our time here. And to go further, I will be inviting the two groups to make their presentations. We have group 1 and we have group 2. I'd like to encourage that everyone puts their videos on as much as you can so that we can see your faces and know how you look. So having said that, please, if you are presenting for group 1, you can take over, just share the screen and begin your presentation. Hi, Jessica.
Good morning, ma. Good afternoon, ma.
Good afternoon. Thanks for showing us your lovely face. Okay, so please.
I'll be the one presenting for group 1.
Okay. Please go ahead. You have about 8 to 10 minutes.
Okay, ma. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, the topic for my group is artificial intelligence regulation and governance. So the main content of this of the group work is to talk about how the importance of artificial intelligence regulation and governance. So introduction, like we're all aware of the existence of AI around us. And based on this reflection, there's need for AI regulation. So the regulation of AI is the development of public sector policies and laws for promoting and regulating AI. The regulatory landscape for AI is an emerging issue in jurisdictions globally, including the European Union and others. Regulation is considered necessary to both encourage AI and to manage the risk. So AI regulation is not to stop the use of AI, is to manage the risk involved and to regulate the use of AI or the creation of AI machines or systems. Okay. AI regulation could be derived from basic principles such as privacy, accountability, safety and security, transparency and explainability, fairness and non-discrimination, human control of technology, professional responsibility, and respect for human values. So the need for AI is based on the fact that there's need for privacy, accountability, safety, and security. For example, there was a video I watched yesterday about this self-driving car that stopped on the road for no reason. And then when the policemen went to the car, they found out that there was nobody in the car. And then few seconds after, the car drove off on its own. So this is also like a call for need of artificial intelligence regulation and governance. So definition of artificial intelligence is artificial intelligence is a software that is developed with one or more techniques and approaches that provides for legal certainty and can, for a given set of human-defined objectives, generate outputs such as content, predictions, recommendations, or decisions influencing the environment they interact with. Let me give an example of applications of AI. For example, the phones that we use, for people that use iPhones, there's Siri on the phone. There's also the self-driving cars, there are robots. An example of an AI robotic is Sophia or Ameca. I don't know how many people are aware about this robotics. Okay, so we need to regulate AI because of complexity, for transparency, for autonomy, for data. AI is used everywhere, basically. AI is good for the citizens, AI is good for businesses. People use AI in hospitals, that are machines that detect cancer and other machineries like that possess this algorithm. So AI will augment our workforce. More of our jobs will be outsourced to AI because they can do so many things, e.g. read, smell, write, and everything humans could do. And this will free up humans to do the things that we humans could do best. So, okay, another, a better language modeling. Language modeling is the process that allows machines to understand and communicate with us in languages we understand. I don't know if everybody can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. For cybersecurity, the World Economic Forum identifies cybercrime potentially posing a more significant risk to the society than terrorism. As machines take over our lives, more of our lives, hacking in cybercrimes inevitably becomes more of a problem. AI is very good in analyzing network and traffic and recognizes patterns that might suggest nefarious intention, and this will be a big thing. AI and the metaverse. Metaverse is the name given to a unified digital environment where users can work and play together. It's a virtual world like the internet, but with the emphasis on enabling a massive experience by the users. Companies like Microsoft are helping to build the metaverse. I know we're all aware of the metaverse, literally. AI governance. An organization scale their use of AI, they increasingly need to do so in responsible governmental manner. This is driven by the complementary forces, brand reputation, anticipated regulations, AI complexity, and social justice. Each of these alone would merit the need for AI governance and the convergence of these forces. And the convergence of these forces makes it clear that AI governance is a critical capability for all enterprises deploying AI without proper artificial intelligence governance. Without AI governance, AI projects are destined to fail. So what's AI governance? AI governance is the process of defining policies and establishing accountability to guide the creation and deployment of AI systems in an organization. It's the ability to direct, manage, and monitor AI activities of an organization. I think I've said this earlier that AI needs, regulation in order to, or like regulations that will direct and manage the use of AI. Okay. The practice involves the practice includes processes that trace and document the origin of data, models, and associated metadata and pipelines for audits. The main focus areas of AI governance are AI as it relates to justice, data quality, and autonomy. This involves identifying answers to questions surrounding the safety of AI, which sectors are appropriate and inappropriate for AI automation, what legal and institutional structures need to be involved, control and access of personal data, and what role model and ethical institutions play when interacting with AI. Okay. As a whole, AI governance determines how much of daily life can be shaped by algorithms and who is in control of monitoring it. And when done right, AI governance empowers organizations to operate with agility and complete trust rather than slowing them down. As organizations deploy AI to automate existing or business workflows to create time to market advantage, AI governance enables them to trust AI-empowered outcomes at every stage of the way to create trusted business outcomes. The development of AI governance will determine how best to handle scenarios where AI-based decisions are unjust or contradict human rights. Okay, in achieving AI governance, it is required that an organization structure that provides governance leaders with the information they need to set for the organization and establish accountability. An organized AI lifecycle that collects this information, enforces the policies specified by the governance leaders, and makes the information accessible to interested parties in consumable, customized manner. The theory of AI governance by Vladimir Putin says, whoever leads in AI will rule the world. This is a theory of governance because it says how a decision would be made under AI-enabled features. This quote by Putin did resonate around the world because it happened to put fear that many people have, that governance of these things in the world could be changed by AI. Power should shift and the world could change. This leads to the normative definition that A good set of processes, good governance usually means that it is effective, legitimate, inclusive, and adaptive. So AI governance has 4 categories of research agenda, which are the technical landscape, politics, politics. So in conclusion, regulation of AI can be seen as positive social means to manage AI control problem. That is the need to ensure long-term beneficial AI with other social responses, such as doing nothing being as impractical. The development of AI governance would help determine how best to handle scenarios where AI-based decisions are unjust or contradict human rights. Organizations that are found on the future and development of AI governance are the Ethics and Governance of AI initiatives. This initiative completes significant public-facing research to investigate and prioritize the societal and political implications of artificial intelligence. So I'm done, ma.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Thank you for the presentation. Let's hear from Group 2. Who is presenting for Group 2?
Good afternoon, ma.
Good afternoon.
My name is Shola, and I'll be presenting for Group 2.
Okay.
So, yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. So, our topic for Group 2 is AI ethics and machine supervision. So basically, it is no news that AI has a very good part of it, and it has so many consequences and cons too if care is not taken and much ethics are not put into consideration. So let's go straight to the point. I hope everybody can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, so what is artificial intelligence? Thank you, Bankole. Artificial intelligence is the simulation of human intelligence into machines that have been trained to think and act like humans. We both, from the onset of artificial intelligence, when it started, the first thing that we think of when we think of artificial intelligence are robots. I remembered when I was young and you watch all these American movies, you see robots in the kitchen, washing plates, robots are being trained for war and all of that. So basically, that is what every average human being, the thoughts they have about artificial intelligence. So it can also be referred to any machine that demonstrates human-like characteristics, like learning and problem solving. For example, there's this Alexa, play me Adioyoki, something like that. Alexa is an example of artificial intelligence. So basically, if artificial intelligence is going to function well, and for the fact that they are machines, and then they can be monitored by human beings, but not basically monitored by human beings like that. That's why we have artificial intelligence ethics. So artificial intelligence ethics, AI ethics, is a set of moral ideas and approaches aimed at guiding development and responsible application of AI technology. So they are the codes. Their AI code of ethics are also known as AI value platform. It's a policy statement. Sorry, can you wait? Yeah, thank you. So it is a policy statement that formally outlines the role of artificial intelligence in the continuous progress of human race. So basically, artificial intelligence ethics are body of, let's say, there are no regulations per se, body of guidance, ideas, moral ideas and approaches that guide the implementation of AI, the building of AI, and how they work and how well they work to avoid errors and then to avoid challenges. These challenges will be considered in the next slide. So the ethical challenges, there are a number of issues that are at the forefront of ethical conversation surrounding AI technologies. Some of these include bias and discrimination. So for there are some AI machines that what they do is they basically recognize faces for facial recognition, recognition of voices. I said Alexa the other time. There are sometimes that as a Black lady, if I talk to Alexa, Alexa might not understand my English because my English is not basically the accent that I speak, is not basically the accent that was used to develop Alexa. So one of these are actually the challenges, the bias and the discrimination that comes with AI. And for example, when it comes to gender recognition, AI easily recognizes female white person than a female Black, than a female, Black lady, recognize white female Blacks, because basically the faces that were used to, let's say, Destron, that AI was a white face. So secondly, I'm going to go to threats to human dignity. No problem. So secondly, I'm going to go to threats to human dignity. So one of the things that human being fights for when it comes to AI is the fact that AI is going to take over all our responsibilities. AI is going to do everything we do. Imagine we have a self-driving car. Who are going to be our drivers if we have AI? They believe that with AI, they are going to lose a lot of jobs. They won't be able to perform as human beings and what they do. And then some people will say that they'll rather do the basic things than allow AI to work for them. Another thing is liability for self-driving cars. This is a question that keeps coming up when we talk about self-driving cars. Who is going to be liable if there's any, let's say, there's an accident? For example, what Jessica said the other time, the example she gave about a self-driving car stopping all of a sudden. Imagine there was a young lady or maybe a baby on the road, and then the self-driving car just hits the lady. Who is going to be responsible? Is it the person behind the self-driving? How are they going to identify the person behind the self-driving car? Is it the engineer or who? So these are the kind of challenges that they face when it comes to AI technologies. So another one is weaponization of artificial intelligence. Most of these countries, most of the world, I have forgotten the name, the top 5 countries, one of the things that they consider is that they consider AI as a source of weapon, what they can use to go for war when war comes. And then we know that these machines, they don't really shut down like that, unlike human being. If you shoot an AI, I don't know, I don't think the bullets can enter. But then you try to shoot a human being and you see what will happen. So most of these countries are trying to make artificial AI technologies, AI machines like robots to go forward. They are training them. And imagine if like the ordinary, let's say 20 robots attack Nigeria. I mean, war be gone by then. That's how some of them are trying to train these robots. So another one is opaque algorithms for opaque. I'm sorry. So most of these machines, some of their conclusions are actually way, sometimes they go beyond the human, let's say our own instructions. Sometimes they make some decisions that we do not even ask them to do. Sometimes they do some things that are actually obsolete from what we ask them to do. So next, I'll be moving on to the ethics guidelines for artificial intelligence. Several influential institutions, including governments, the European Union, and so on, have tasked expert panels with drafting policy documents and ethical for AI as a result of widespread awareness of and in interest in the ethical issues surrounding. Basically, for any artificial intelligence, some people have sat down, they've seen these challenges that, wow, this challenge is actually threatening our race, it's threatening the development of this AI. If care is not taken, these things are going to go, and the rate at which AI is actually increasing, the way they are growing, it is even faster than we can imagine. So many people, some people are actually worried about this. So they actually tasked some people, they sat down together, what are we going to do? How are we going to write this etiquette out? What are we going to put into consideration if we want to bring out ethics to help the usage of AI technologies? So after jobbing Ito's comparative assessment, it discovered widespread agreement on 5 essential principles. That is, these 5 essential principles will be the basis of AI ethics. That is, they are transparency, justice and fairness, responsibility, and privacy. So if all things are put into consideration, then we can now get these examples of the code of ethics, like AI code of ethics, and then we'll get what we're actually looking at. So straight up, I'm going to go into examples of AI code of ethics. So the first man that brought out the robotic laws is Isaac Asimov, the famous science fiction writer. He published his 3 laws of robotics in Run Round, which became the first ethical code for AI systems. So after Isaac brought out his 3 laws of robotics, some set of people too added some things, one ethic to it, so that made it 4. So the first set of AI code of ethics are, first one is that a robot may not harm a human being or allow a human being to be harmed by inaction. Except, the second one is, except when such directions clash with the first law, a robot must obey the orders provided to it by humans. And the third one is that as long as this protection does not clash with the first or second laws, a robot must defend its own existence. And then the fourth one is, a robot may not injure mankind or enable humanity to suffer as a result of its inactivity. So the summarization of all these ethics is just one thing. Robots are meant to, they are developed, they are built to protect human beings. So whatever their function will be, whatever the stuff they are asked to do, whatever they are programmed to do, there's one thing that is basic. They're supposed to protect human beings. They cannot do above and they cannot do below. So that is the basics for the first 4 AI code of ethics. So the general consensus on the 4 rules is that they are significant, but however, they are insufficient to address all the problems associated with moral machines. I feel they are vague actually, because what's that thing that will make a robot to harm human? What is that thing that a robot will do? There are a lot of things that a robot will do that will harm humans. So they have to actually subdivide it, list them out to make it sufficient. So the following is a list of other examples of AI code of ethics. The first one is, an ethical AI system must be inclusive, explainable, have a positive goal, and ethical use data. So one of this thing that an AI technology must have is that, achieve your face because of 5 years. Thank you. I'm sorry. Just give me a sec.
Hello, Fumi. Okay, so I don't think that.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm back now. Sorry. Can everybody hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. So I said that an ethical AI system must be inclusive. So it must have this positive goal. What is, for example, there are some robots that are actually built to go for war. They are weaponized for something like that. So a robot should not have that. I don't think that kind of goal is actually positive. It's negative in nature. So that means that a robot that has that kind of goal should be checked. They should check this ethic, and then they should be actually, what will I say? They should be, I don't know, they should be checked before something like that can come into existence. So the second one is, a positive purpose AI system, for example, aspires to decrease fraud, eliminate waste, reward people, mitigate climate change. Sorry, you're moving it. Okay, thank you. Change, ill disease, and so on. So some AI systems, some AI technologies are used hello. Can everybody see me?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, so I said that some AI systems are used they are meant to detect fraud. They are meant to check the climate and navigate some things. So one of these things should be in. So this thing are the positive purpose of AI system. So I'll go to the third one. An inclusive AI system is neutral and works well for people from all walks of life. So that means that AI system should be neutral. It shouldn't be biased. It shouldn't be discriminating. You shouldn't see a Black woman and say, oh, I can't recognize you, whereby I'm invited for this thing, but then because I'm Black and then you can't recognize me. So it should be neutral. It should be, it shouldn't be biased, so to say. So the fourth one is data privacy rights. So basically, there's sometimes that if you want to, for example, if you want to talk to, there's this GTAI system that all this customer service that are now included in AI technologies that you can actually talk to a customer care service on your phone. So, but while doing that, you're going to share some of your privacy, some of your data before the AI can actually access you, or before you can access the AI, you share some of your data. So these things shouldn't be used against you, and then should be used according to how you want to use it. They shouldn't use your data against you. So straight up, we're going to go to the future of AI ethics. Some contend that an AI code of ethics can quickly become obsolete, and that a more proactive approach is needed to keep up with a constantly changing era. We both know that AI is basically flying. The technology is flying. It's not waiting for, thank you. It's not waiting for us. It's not waiting for, oh, thank you. It's not waiting for we human beings. It is running. So if we're going to look for an ethic that is going to guide them and that is going to do what we want, that means it has to be up to date. It has to be moving. It has to be flying the way they are flying. In fact, if they are moving on a 100%, the ethics should be moving on a 200. So to be able to meet up to the technologies that will be put in place. So according to Justin Shepard, Vice President of Ecosystem at Zepada, an edge AI solution vendor, a proactive strategy to guarantee ethical AI entails tackling 3 areas, and they are namely policy. They are saying that, so he's saying that these things should be the things that these basic principles should be the areas that people will check if you want to tackle AI and then AI technologies as a basic for ethics. So the first thing is policy. This entails creating an adequate framework for driving standardization and putting in place regulations. So a policy should be made to give a standard implementation of AI technology. You can't just do something because, okay, I have an idea, I want to build a robot that will be able to carry a whole house or a whole building or be able to carry a whole car without thinking about the policies that will make it standard to fit into human needs and human activities. So another thing is education. The data scientists, the frontline staffs, and everybody that will be involved with the AI system or AI technology should be educated about how it goes. They should know the things and what to do and what not to do when creating or building an AI. So the last thing is technology. Executives must also design AI system that is meant to detect any fraudulent data inside the AI technology. It shouldn't be just about creating the AI technology. They should have let's say a side AI system that is designed into checking whether there is any fraudulent activity going on with the AI technology. So we're moving straight to machine supervision. Machine supervision is a subfield of machine learning and artificial intelligence that is also known as supervised learning or supervised machine learning. It is the use of labeled database to train algorithms that accurately identify data or predict outcomes that defines it. So basically, machine supervision had the data that are used to they are the data that they are used to label or indicate the inputs of data that has already been in existence. So the operations of supervised learning. The supervised learning teaches models to produce the desired output used in training. The supervised learning teaches models to produce the desired output using a training data set. This training data set contains both correct and incorrect outputs, allowing the model to improve over time. Second slide, please. So there are 2 types of learning algorithms in supervised learning. There are classification and regression. Classification, it is an algorithm that is used to classify test data and allocate it to certain groups. It recognizes certain entities in the data set and makes educated guesses about how those entities should be labeled or defined. So this is basically used to classify data sets, to classify test data and then to allocate it to certain groups. So I'm going to regression. Regression is used to explore the relationship between dependence and independence variables. So regression is used like inputs or outputs variables. It's used to predict continuous variables like weather forecasting, market trends, and so on. Challenges of supervised learning. So although supervised learning may provide business with a lot of benefits, but there are certain challenges. One is to structure correctly. Supervised learning models may necessitate a certain level of skill. Second one is it can take a long time to train supervised learning models. And then the last one is how human mistake is more likely in data sets and resulting in algorithm learning wronging and affecting accuracy. So in conclusion, after looking into AI ethics and supervision, it's comforting to realize that the two are intricately linked. This is because the correct application of the supervised machine learning is dependent on the adherence to the ethical guidelines. So basically, who are those people behind AI technology? It is nobody from the sky. It is nobody from maybe a space or something. It is we human beings. We are the ones that are doing it. So I believe that basically AI ethics are not meant for the AI technologies actually. They are meant for the people behind the AI technology. They are meant for them to know how they can build and what to impute in this AI technologies to make it work for us, the human being, better. So responsible usage of AI is required to ensure a positive impact on how consumers engage with and perceive a company. As a result, establishing an ethical and transparent AI framework is critical. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Funmi. Thank you for that presentation. I think that the women are really on fire today, and thank you for bringing so much value to us. So we'll just go ahead to listen to our mentors. They will be talking to us about like the practical aspect of the things that have already been presented. So let's hear from Akin first of all, before we hear from the other mentors present. Akin.
Hello, good afternoon. Yeah. Hello?
Okay. Yes, I can hear you. Sorry.
Okay, so thank you for inviting me to today's session, and I'd like to appreciate the center for both because we have quite a bit. So I'm not the only mentor yet, just this much time. I will try to focus on. I made some comments while I was talking, and some questions were sent to me in advance. I was touch upon, so
maybe we can take your comments. Sorry. Maybe we can take your comments first and then the comments from your other mentors before we go into the Q&A session.
Okay, that's fine. So I'll start with group one. I just want to do like two practical examples of some things that in one of the, I think, part about the impact of AI made reference to language modeling. And I just had to find that currently, I think one of the second presentation made of how Alexa will have understanding our accent because that was not what we do. So there's currently a project going on that involves African setters. And the name is Masakani, that's Masakhan in the chat box. So what Masakani is, they are trying to build data sets for building voice assistants and that understand African languages. So in the way that Siri will speak to Siri in English, so they want to build data sets for building similar products that can understand African language. So You can speak with it, any African language, and this voice assistant would understand what you are saying. So that's an example of an African approach to language modeling. Another thing you made mention of was cybersecurity, of how AI, made mention, what about AI, very efficient covering issues. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I think it's just that it might not be so clear.
Okay. So what I was saying is that when it comes to issues of cybersecurity, there is as efficient as AI is cybersecurity, AI also has its own native cybersecurity, in the sense that it is possible for a system to be hacked. That is why we have things like threat modeling, where you are using, you carry out things like threat modeling to understand what are the weaknesses in that system, so that you can put in place measures to safeguard them, like what you call ethical hacking or white hat hacking. Then for group 2, you made mention of biases and how some facial them may not be black. In practice, what is usually referred to protected categories and the intersections thereof. Where, for instance, now, like you said, if facial recognition system might very easily recognize a white male, might very easily recognize white. When it comes to a black person, it might be less efficient. Okay, but then when you then make that black, when you then bring a black female, it then becomes the efficiency then goes down. So usually when people build data sets, they don't take it of those smaller groups of smaller data samples like black women or black men or those other smaller groups. So because those groups are usually less prioritized, when you build systems that they will eventually use, they get lost in the cracks. That's why those systems are less efficient for them. Intersection between blacks and females. These are two groups that typically are not well favored with AI. So that thing you made mention of what threat to humanity, and it made me remember the concept of explainability. Where, for instance, now an opaque algorithm. So I will just want to use the example of credit assessment to explain this a bit better. Where yes, it's true that AI goes threat to humanity, and this usually has to where it's not explainable, and I'll explain. So let's say, for example, I want to take from a system, and the system uses data about my financial history to derive a score that okay, this person can be given a loan or not. So let's say, for instance, the system scores me that okay, it scores me below 50. Anyone below 50. The decision of that system affects my ability to access much debt finances. Explainability could help that. How? Explainability for AI models involve that if you are going to tell people how you made the decision, models how you made the decision. So you got a score below, what is called this is why. Okay, your income is below the threshold for this. Your work history is that kind of thing. Then there's a further place called Explainability Plus. Explainability Plus is about okay, don't just tell me why I failed, tell me how I failed. So if you want to get a better score next time you apply for it, try to provide more of your employment history. Don't ask for a loan of 10 million, probably ask for a loan of 1 million, a loan which you have higher chance of yes, that kind. So using explainability and explainability plus is a way to reduce the threat to humanity that AI can pose. And this is just after this done. Another thing I just want to point out is the reference to maybe human AI ethics and machine supervision, but I'll leave that for the when we speak.
Thank you very much, Akin, for your comments. Let's also hear from Matt.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed both presentations, and I thought between them they raised some of the key issues. So Jessica talked about the overall aim of regulation to promote AI, but also manage the risks. I think that's absolutely right. She talked about the social benefits and the benefits to productivity. And she also talked about the importance of global competition. And I think these are very, very important considerations. And Shola gave some good examples and was very good on social change, talking about the risk to employment, for example. And I particularly liked her summary of the 5 universal considerations when it comes to regulation, and indeed the 3 pillars for the future, so policy, education, and technology. The comments I would have to add, and I really think both presentations were excellent. I think one general point is that no one can agree on a definition for AI. And I think that's an issue for regulation because it's quite hard to regulate something when you can't define it very well. And I think one thing to emphasize, I think this was clear in the presentations, but it's always worth emphasizing, is it's much wider than robots, it's much wider than autonomous vehicles. Both people talked about Siri and other online AIs. It really is any use of an automated computer system to make decisions about us, and it includes social media and things which are already affecting us in our daily lives and arguably already require regulation. I think the other key points are the massive potential impact of AI. It really does have applications in absolutely every sector, in every area of human activity. And that means that it's not just issues like what should happen when a self-driving car kills someone or injures someone. It's also that it really will change society. And we've already seen that the use of algorithms to recommend content on social media has actually changed the way that people approach politics. And that is a very significant issue. And I've got to emphasize that these are large social issues which go far beyond AI, and they're very hard to know how to solve them. Then I just wanted to turn to Shola's example of Isaac Asimov's principles, and I thought that was a great example to show how people have thought. And the European Union considered those as well, and they made the point, which is worth recognizing, that they can't be encoded into a computer program. And I want to make 2 points there about artificial intelligence and particularly about machine learning. The first is that machine learning, as Shola explained, for example, of supervised learning, it identifies patterns itself. It figures out essentially how to program itself, and it finds ways to replicate human behaviors like the ability to drive a car, but it has no understanding. It doesn't understand human society, it doesn't understand our values, it doesn't understand how we think. And so to tell it to follow a law like you shouldn't harm a human, it doesn't know what that means. And so there is no way that machine learning can understand ethics. You need a different kind of programming at best. And the other thing is actually a simple set of rules like Asimov's, which such as don't harm a human, etc. They actually require a deep understanding of society anyway, and even a human trying to program that would not be able to do it. So really, the focus of AI regulation is not on the actual programs themselves, but it's on the humans using those programs to always assess whether the use of AI is appropriate at all in the context you're considering using it. And if you do decide to use it, to make sure that you're minimizing the risks through things other than the AI, the things surrounding it, like your record keeping, the information you give people about it so they can make informed decisions about whether to use the AI. So yeah, in conclusion, fantastic presentations, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Matt, for the contribution also. Thank you very much. So we'll hear from Favor. Hi, Favor.
Hello, Juliana and everyone here.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. And can you guys hear me at all?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I always like to check. And I've enjoyed the presentations from Jessica and Shola this morning. And I've learned quite a lot from presentations and from Aki and Matt's comments earlier before me. I would just like to say a few things that I noticed, comment on a couple of issues. So the first thing I want to say is sort of related to what Matt said, related to how difficult AI is to define, and it's a problem that it's apart from the fact that many AI developers and researchers, that is the people that are actually building AI, define AI differently. Some people would say, well, this is not really AI. It's not really intelligence. It's only statistics or pattern recognition, or it's not AI, or it was previously AI, but it's not what they would consider AI today. So apart from that, there's also a challenge of definition between policymakers and people from engineering and computer scientists and all those people building it. So the definition challenge varies based on various factors. And then I also wanted to say that regarding the first presentation, one thing I noted regarding the third biggest AI trends in the future, how AI will augment our workforce. There is an ethical challenge there, of course, regarding, apart from job loss, we also want to think about also what's considering, the way, what sort of jobs are being lost, for instance. And I read a tweet a couple of, I think just last week actually, I think OpenAI, was it OpenAI, released this, I forgot the name, I think DALL, a large data set, and yes, DALL-E, yes, a large data set for, through which basically, to put it very simply, through which you can type a couple of words and you will get an image. So I read someone say that when we first began to consider the impact of AI on work, some of our fears were that, okay, it will first affect, blue collar jobs, the sort of laborious or monotonous, repetitive kind of work that pays the least, or that for which, and doesn't require any particular specializations, and for which employers would want to make a profit or save by simply automating people away. And that was problematic because, well, the groups of people who are available to take on these sorts of jobs are the also are the the same set of people who would really struggle to find work in other places. But now it appears to be that the reverse is the case, that even the jobs that people would say, well, it doesn't matter, AI is not going to come for a job if you are creative, you are working in the creative space, you are making something from your mind, it's not easily replicable. Well, I saw one image. The one that really stood out to me the most was, I think the guy typed, the prompt was a rabbit detective in a monocle or something like that. And the illustration came out. It was a rabbit wearing a suit, sitting on a bench in a park with a monocle. And it was just, it's just interesting what's considering some of the implications for people who work in precarious jobs and illustrators generally. There's been this campaign since last year, and illustrators have been campaigning for better pay. So imagine the risks. Now, I'm such a huge fan of animation. I love cartoons so much. Japanese, Chinese, English. I love them all. And learning that the people who work so hard to bring these ideas to life are being poorly compensated. And the fact that their work, the space they work in is at so much risk, not just from, you know, studios that refuse to compensate them well enough, but also from automation is very sad, I think. And then there was also something I noted from the first presentation, I think related to I'm gonna scroll down. I think well, I can no longer find it, but I noted some other things anyway. So from the second presentation, one of the things that I noted was related to, well, sorry, excuse me, trying to broaden the slides. Okay, before I come to the future of AI ethics, which I want to talk about, I wanted to say something regarding, I think, okay, let me just talk about what I wanted to say regarding the future of AI ethics. So some of the considerations and some of the issues regarding the future of AI ethics is, of course, that as the second presenter already defined ethics, it's what did she say? It relates to moral codes. And well, if you're a law student and you took jurisprudence in maybe your final year, you learn that there's a difference between morality and legality. And so, of course, the problem with ethics being so tightly tied with morality is that something that is moral might not necessarily be legal, or something that is to do an act that is immoral might not necessarily amount to doing an illegality. And so there's the fact that there's the problem with ethics that so many researchers in this space, especially, I must note, especially from the US, is that a lot of people could adopt ethical frameworks and then simply choose to not apply them because they are not binding. And then there's also the problem of ethics washing, which basically amounts to a company coming out to say that we are adopting this AI ethical frameworks. We have contributed to it. Some of our top researchers worked in the formulation of it. They paste it on their websites, that they are signatories, and they have endorsed it. But when it comes down to it, they are not actually being ethical. They are not actually doing things that we would consider morally right, even though loopholes in the law might exist that permit those actions, those activities. And then there was something I noted that I can no longer find again. I wanted to say something as well regarding content moderation and the Masakane project, which Akin noted earlier. So like Akin said, the Masakane project is a project being run by African researchers working in natural language processing. So what they're trying to do is that they are trying to make it possible for you to communicate for AI algorithms across social media platforms and online, while you are doing your online shopping or conversational agents, to be able to understand many local languages. And that is important because Matt mentioned something regarding content moderation. So if you follow the crisis in places like Myanmar, for instance, which was amplified on Facebook, you'd read that part of the problem that Facebook had regulating violence on their platform was that they found their algorithms were not adequately equipped to properly understand the language, the local language in which some of those posts were being made. And I see that there are so many Nigerians here, so many Yoruba people here. So there's this acronym I see on Twitter, ENKR, and it basically stands for Nikure, you will not die well. But I've seen an instance where someone would write ENKR and they will put a heart emoji and then something like a prayer. And if you did not understand that language, you would think this person has basically just said something nice like a prayer or something, and it will not be automatically flagged by whatever algorithm Twitter uses to automatically moderate content. So part of the importance of that project is to provide some nuance into, provide some help into aiding the activities and actions of some of these algorithms that are being deployed on these platforms. But beyond that, they are also working on, saving African languages so that our languages will not go extinct. We have these conversations on Twitter all the time regarding how certain people are ashamed to speak their local language because they get mocked by more fluent speakers, or no one ever spoke it to them and all that. But one very important, and so that's why this project is so vital. It's basically about preserving the African language, and they actually aim to expand this to not just NLP, but also laws, provide policy engagement, and aid local understanding of AI ethics and AI projects and AI governance. And that's really another another side to AI governance. It's how can we break down these concepts to people at the grassroots. I have now come to hate that word, grassroots, but how can we ensure that everybody in Nigeria, in Africa, regardless of your job or what you do or where you school, you have at least a basic understanding of these subjects. We all consider ourselves to be sort of experts when it comes to politics. Everybody, I think Nigerians are so politically aware of so many things that are wrong with this country. How can we see some of that awareness when it comes to the impact of technology and artificial intelligence and other algorithms? So that's basically what I wanted to say. Those are my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Favour, for your contribution. I think it has shed more light on the topic. Thank you very much, Favour, and to all our mentors. I think that we'll just go straight to the Q&A. So I can see that Kelly is here. So probably he would take a first go at the questions in the chat box, and then every other mentor would also get to give their own thoughts to the questions. So I would read out all the questions at a go, and then I'll just call the mentors to touch on them. So the first question is, based on the research, the only thing gathered was either made by EU or US. What is the contribution of the African Union concerning artificial intelligence. The second question is, how will AI impact Nigerian law since the presence of artificial intelligence is not vivid in Nigeria? The third question is, how does the deliberation of artificial intelligence for the future have an impact on Africa as a whole? The fourth question is, considering the continuous error made by AI during the performance of their duties, how effective can we say AI ethics are? And the final question is there a relationship between AI ethics and machine supervision? So we'll hear from Kelly first, and then we'll also hear from the other mentors present. So the questions are in the chat box. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry I came in a bit late. Yeah, so I missed out on a lot of the presentations. But there was a presentation slide that was sent to me. I don't know who sent that. Just give me a second to check to my PC. Bankole, okay. Okay. I don't know if that person has presented.
They both presented.
Oh, all right, great. So that was a pretty great presentation on I mean, some of the issues that was not that in that presentation are quite I mean expressed in the questions that were asked just now. So in terms of AI and ethics, I was referring to that presentation because there was a point that it talked about the issue of using our AI and ethics refers to AI being used for goods and for a lot of applications like climate change, probably maybe racial profiling, for example, although the research didn't mention that. So the point is AI, even in terms of its application, for example, if AI was used in natural language processing, like the last speaker was talking about, there are some languages which people today will find offensive. For example, somebody says something like fuck that, or yeah, fucking this or fucking that. Now that language might be offensive, but that is someone's free speech. So would it be right to allow AI to learn those kind of languages, probably translate them and digitize them for future generations? So who makes the rule whether that language is bad or is correct or is right or admissible? So in terms of AI and ethics, it's a really I mean divisive topic, and I'm happy that we are talking about all of that now. So straight to the question, based on the research, the only thing that I was either by especially the European Union, I think they have a very strong impression on how ethics should be applied when it comes to AI. I mean, technology generally, even in terms of hardware. So they have a lot of committees and platforms set up to build on their ethics in terms of AI application. Then for African Union, I don't know about that, but I do know they have bodies regulating aspects such as technology, probably even emerging technology. But in terms of AI application, AI itself, how it's going to affect, I don't think they have a specific strategy. They might have a roadmap, but in terms of a specific strategy and implementation, I don't think they do. But most African countries do have. I think South Africa has, Nigeria has, and I think Tunisia. So yeah, a lot of African country has AI roadmap, what they call AI roadmap. So it's more like how AI can be used in terms of their ecosystem or their economy or their community or whatever body, even companies too. So it's all a matter. African Union doesn't really need to come up with one grand strategy for Africa to really apply and use AI. So that's for the first question. Then as regards the second question, AI impacting Nigerian law. Now I think it's more a question of Nigerian law itself. How dynamic are Nigerian laws? How dynamic are they? How often are they reviewed? Because in terms of AI, it requires a lot of let me say exposure. So that's to say, a lot of things should have happened for us to be able to say, okay, exactly, this kind of law that should fit in this narrative. Now, just because a singular event happens does not mean we should just go and create a law that will just stem down one event, because by doing that, we might be causing out a lot of avalanche or ricochet in terms of other areas. So for Nigerian law for artificial intelligence, yes, we do have a framework that was presented by the current minister of what's his name again? Forgetting the Islamic cleric. So he came up. I think that was like some 4 years ago. So yeah, Nigeria has a framework for artificial intelligence, but in terms of law in the judiciary system, I don't think there is anything concrete or that's been set out now. And it's true, not just Nigeria. AI has not really started affecting life to that extent where common sense cannot guide us yet. So probably when the applications become more widespread, and probably we're talking about robotics and all, maybe at that point in time, it would be right for people to sit down in a council and decide what laws to implement and to involve. But for now, I don't think all of that should even come in, because we're even still talking about awareness. People don't even know what AI is. So making law on it might just be too far-fetched from reality. Then in terms of deliberation for the future as a whole, how does the deliberation of artificial intelligence for the future have on the impact of Africa as a whole? Yeah, just like in any region, AI does have potential, but it is small how it is used, the scale at which it is used, the complexity at which it is used, the intent why it is being used, and all that. Because a lot of countries, a lot of people, a lot of let me say countries now too, they're jumping on the AI tag, but they don't really have that deep intention to really bring AI to, I mean, it's just like saying everybody is doing this thing, let us just do our own. So that's, but I mean, take a case of Nigeria, for example, looking at the whole political scene. If the government today were bringing out an AI, say, intervention or AI program, there's going to be a lot of political intrigues that will be surrounding it. And it might just be a white elephant project. They just do a fanfare and they do signing, and budget is allocated for some committees and some projects. And probably that's the end we hear of that thing. So in terms of actual impact of artificial intelligence on African countries, it's a matter of intent. Now, we talking about this is also giving the opportunity for us to see things from a different perspective. For example, the private sector has a big role to play in fact, I think the private sector has the bigger role to play, because all I say, capitalism, in essence, is one of the greatest driver for application of technologies. So when it comes to AI, if capitalism, I mean, forgive my how they call it now, interpreting capitalism as a person. But if capitalism were to see that there is a high profit margin in terms of application for AI in a specific area, it will not waste time. It will not ask anybody question. It will quickly go and build a product or a service that will guarantee it profit. And you will be surprised how fast and how large scale that venture would grow because profit is involved. But now in a lot of cases, AI can mostly be seen when it comes to the current the industries and the business case now, use cases now, they are used as a form to help business processes. So they are not a hand in themselves. So most businesses that feel, oh, we don't need to invest too much money in AI. We can do in our manual methods and still get almost the same results instead of spending that whole capital on AI. So let's just keep doing it that way. Now, for those kind of companies, they are not really seeing AI as an end sales point. But if AI, an application of it, for example, we're talking about the natural language processing. For example, there's a product where I can speak into a device and it can speak Hausa to anybody. I just tell the product, hey, I want maybe so and so, and it can interpret in any language. So that's by virtue of that, anywhere I go in Nigeria or in this country or in Africa as a whole, that device can be my translator. And if say that device is very, very affordable, everyone will want to get it. But that application, it's very, unlikely to be coming from a government project, so to say. So that's why I'm trying to say the best way to start looking at AI also in terms of application in large scale like this is mostly going to come from the private sector. So, but capitalism, we know what capitalism does. If it's not profits and on a high margin, it's not going to step its foot or tie its hand into that whole venture. So, to the fourth question, yeah, okay. So, considering the continuous error made by AI during performance, how effective can we say AI ethics are? AI errors during performance. Yeah, I know AI does have some errors, but I need to understand the context here because errors are things that can, in terms of AI, that can be improved on or might be increased due to how effective the algorithm is built. So if you have enough good data and enough proper device machine servers to train your AI algorithm, your error margin is going to be so low. And as long as it is better than human error margin, then we cannot quantify this error that is being said here as the case to say AI ethics. So I'm just going to talk about AI ethics in general in respect to AI error that is life-threatening, so to say. So for example, I think there are different types of error. So that's to say, if my AI is to detect that somebody is going to die from a disease, and early detection is going to save that person's life, but the AI fails to detect that thing, but maybe it has an error of 40% and it fails, and that person dies, that is a very big loss. But say on the other aspect, an AI is recommending what kind of products to buy on Jumia, and it makes an error. So instead of saying, oh, buy this computer, it's telling me to buy this other phone. That error is not life-threatening. So in terms of AI ethics, we need to nuance our discussion of AI error to this particular ethics we're discussing on. So, but in general, AI errors can be devastating. So imagine an AI is being used in a war in Ukraine and Russia, and you get to that point where AI is autonomously controlling some tanks, and those tanks were sent to somewhere in Ukraine, a community in Ukraine, to spot anybody that looks like a military person. And there's a high error margin in that AI algorithm, and it begins to spot civilians as military people and to bomb them and blow them up. Now, that is where we'll now begin to say, okay, ethics, we need to really come and sit down in this ethics discussion properly, because the amount of damage that AI can cause due to error, the scale might be something that humans might not even be able to think of. Because, for example, if an AI mistakenly, by mistake, goes to launch a nuclear war code, it's not going to be an easy case for anybody to judge, because at that point in time, who are you going to even hold accountable? So you now see that even the idea of even giving AI some responsibilities, it is dependent on the scale of risk involved and the impact of what the error would mean. So for AI ethics generally, I think it should be equated to the impact of the error that would result if the AI makes that error. So if the error is going to be too large, it's better humans are involved in that. Humans that have ethical side to them. So sometimes you can even balance a system, 50% AI, 50% human, so that there's a balance. Humans can also put in their own ethical or their moral judgment on the side of the issues. The algorithm can become better. So the fourth question, considering the continuous error made by, that's the fourth question. The fifth question, AI ethics and machine supervision. Okay, so of course there is. Now machine supervision, I believe this is supervised learning that's being asked here. So because there's also a case where there's unsupervised learning, but I was just going to take this to mean supervised learning in context. So what is the relationship between AI ethics and supervised learning? Now, supervised learning means you deliberately are the one arranging what kind of data the AI is going to learn with. So for example, if I was making an AI and I say this AI should be able to detect the faces of individuals in Nigeria, and I say, me, I don't like Hausa people. Maybe one Hausa girl broke my heart one time. I said, I don't like Hausa people. So anytime I see Hausa people picture in that thing, I'll say, no, just remove it. I want only Igbo girls, probably because they are fine. I want maybe Yoruba girls or something. Now, that's my own supervised learning. I'm the one making those pre-judgment now. By the time the AI algorithm gets built and it begins to, whenever it sees Hausa people and it says, no, these people are not recognized in my system or my database, so I cannot process whatever it needs me to process for them. Maybe their face cannot be detected, probably whenever. So you see now that my own personal, how will I put it now, belief system, which I used in building up my ethics, has been influenced or indoctrinated or infused into whatever algorithm I am bringing out. I think this also happened one time in, I think a university in US, or there was an AI project where faces were used for training, and because Africans were not properly represented, that's blacks were not properly represented, that AI algorithm came out, and when it saw black people, it will say this one is an ape. But when you see the white person, it will say this person is a human being from somewhere, but Africans is an ape. Now, it's just a matter of the people who provided the supervision for that learning not taking into account, probably because of their own bias, probably, I'm just saying, it might be an example, because of their own bias, they did not factor in all of the races to be, to as necessities for the data that will be infused in the learning. So they just said, oh, now right, let's just put our own data there. And yeah, they have sufficient data to use for their training. So you can see that in terms of ethics at the end of the day, being applied to AI and machine learning, and in this case, machine supervision, it's more a matter of your personal belief system. Because if you were heading out a research and you believe that all Muslims or all Christians are something, or all these people are something, let's say you have some preconceived notion about a certain race or a certain ideology, there is a very high chance that you're going to infuse that mindset and that framework into your creation, which is the machine supervision you're managing. So AI ethics is a big topic. It's a topic that requires us to look at human nature more rather than looking at the technology itself, because AI is already there. It's just a tool. But human nature is what is going to drive the technology to the next stage of how it's being utilized, how it's being appreciated by humans and all that. So if you have bad humans, they are going to want to use AI for bad. At that point in time, are we going to be talking about ethics or morality? So it's a big topic. I believe continuous discussion and deliberation on this would open up our perspective to make proper decisions when we are in the position to do so. So thanks everyone. I think that will be all from my end. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Kelly, for the detailed answers that you gave to the questions that were asked. And I think we understand it better. Thank you. So let's hear from Matt if he has things to add to what Kelly has said.
Sure, thank you very much. So I'll try to be quick. So your first question is about the only information gathered on AI was either the European Union or the US. I would say that it's definitely true that significant work has been done by the EU and the US. I think China is also an incredibly significant market which is producing AI regulations, and it's important to be aware of what they're doing. But there are lots of other organizations, including the Global Partnership on AI, the World Economic Forum, the UN, and lots of individual researchers and lots of companies. And someone was already mentioned that companies have their own guidelines. So there's lots of models for regulation out there. I don't know myself in any detail what the African Union is doing. And indeed, there's so much being published in the UK and Europe alone that I struggle to keep up with that. But I do see on their website that they are calling for laws on AI, and someone has already mentioned the work in Tunisia, Senegal, Kenya, South Africa, etc., on privacy and some work on AI. But I would say that, and I'll return to this theme, there is a sort of general concern that maybe with the exception of Australia, the entire southern hemisphere is behind in the race for AI, and that just as I think Jessica was mentioning that there is global competition, it is a real problem if we end up with some regions of the world hogging the benefits of AI. So it is very important that the benefits are shared as widely as possible. Your second question is how AI will impact Nigerian law, given that artificial intelligence is not vivid in Nigeria. I think I understand that to mean that it's not widespread, maybe. I mean, as both Jessica and Shola said, Alexi, Siri, and other forms of AI are already being used around the world, and they already have real impacts on people. So I think there is an impact anywhere at the moment, social media and the like. So I don't think there's a place on earth where it isn't an issue already. Now, in terms of the impact on law in particular, I would make a couple of comments. First of all, there is no country on earth that has enough experts in AI to spare them to work on regulation effectively. And the EU, the US, and the UK are certainly all struggling to get enough people together to work on regulation in a timely manner. And also, I don't think it's necessarily true that AI has to have regulation itself. And really, all countries have some sorts of laws against fraud, against discrimination, to protect people against negligence, product liability, and the like. And it's certainly a lot of the potential harms for AI should be covered by existing laws. What the European Union is doing is focusing on a very small number of activities enabled by AI which they consider to be forbidden. And it's things like using biometric biometric recognition of people by private companies or in public spaces, and also the use of fakes. And I can see the virtue in having a small number of absolute no-nos, but the rest of it is about trying to make companies act responsibly. But it's a very general approach, and it's really about, is the use of AI appropriate, and are you minimizing the risk as well as you can? And as I said, if you have strong rules on product liability or negligence, those things are sort of automatic. They follow from the existing laws. So I really think that if I were to pick one topic that every country should spend time on in terms of law, it is the balance between privacy and innovation. I think that's really one of the critical questions. So your third question is, how does the deliberation of AI for the future have an impact on Africa as a whole? I wasn't quite sure what you meant by the deliberation of AI, maybe the regulation. But I think stepping back and on a broader issue, the impact of AI generally, Jessica already talked about global competition, and I've already mentioned the importance of making sure the benefits of AI are spread evenly. And I think it's incredibly important for every region to make sure that they enjoy and retain the economic benefits of AI locally. And so the priority everywhere, and arguably before regulation, the priority everywhere is education, so you have the talent, access to funding so that companies can develop AI. And I think, returning to my point about privacy and innovation, currently most AI is based on large training data sets. And so it is trying to make sure that companies have access to training data, and that can be things like government data that get shared, and it can be trying to have the right balance between privacy and innovation where people give their consent for training data. But more generally, every place on earth needs to make sure when it comes to innovation and making sure that AI is developed, that you have the strong rule of law, stable business environment, social mobility, and you're sharing the wealth. And that is a problem everywhere around the world, and America in some ways is an example where wealth is not being shared when it comes to development of AI, and that could create real problems. The continuous errors made by AI, I really like Kelly's answer on this. The errors are useful for training, and actually errors per se may still mean that you have a better system than allowing a human to do things. But I would emphasize, I've said it already, that AI systems don't have any understanding of the world and can make very unpredictable and extreme errors. But there are no absolute technical solutions to any of these problems yet. So really, AI ethics is not a yes, no, this is ethical, this is not. It is really an exercise in making sure that the humans involved are actually questioning whether the use of AI is appropriate for a particular scenario and that they're reducing the risk. And it's a detailed, ongoing exercise. So it is only as effective as the people are and their commitment to constantly monitoring the use of AI in an ethical way. And then finally, the relationship between AI ethics and machine supervision. Shola explained supervised learning very well. And the difference is you have supervised, where, as Shola mentioned, you have maybe labeled data, you have known outcomes, and the machine is learning how to get from the inputs to the desired outputs. And the opposite is unsupervised learning, where you give a machine a lot of data and it finds patterns. You don't know what patterns it's looking for. You don't know what outputs you're looking for, but it just finds relationships that you may not have realized. But I don't think it has anything to do with ethics at all. Supervised learning is just a method where you're telling it what to do. And you can use supervised learning to do incredibly unethical things. So Shola talked about weapons. You can use supervised learning to make a weapons system. There's no connection per se between supervision and ethics. But of course, if you are trying to train it to do something ethical, it's a good method. And the other thing I should point out is supervised training is the dominant form of machine learning at the moment, and it is the form of machine learning which creates bias systems from time to time. Because if the real world data you're using in fact includes bias, the machine will just replicate those biases. So really, I return to the general point, which is AI regulation at the moment has no technical solutions. It's about the people making sure they think about whether the AI can be used appropriately, and they are limiting the risks by keeping records, informing people about its nature, maybe keeping a human in the loop. But supervised learning per se is not a solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt, for the contribution also. It has been very valuable. So we'll be rounding up soon, but before we do that, let's hear from Favor if there are also things that she would like to add to the answers that have already been shared regarding the questions.
Okay. Yes, so I do have a couple of things that I'd like to add. Regarding the first question, I'm aware that the African Union passed a resolution, resolution 473, actually, on the need to undertake a study on human and people's rights and artificial intelligence, robotics, and other new and emerging technologies in Africa. So this was last year, and this is the extent, as far as I know, of the AU's work on artificial intelligence. Where is this app? Okay, on artificial intelligence regulation, that is when you compare it with resolutions and other work that has been done by the EU, the OECD, UNESCO, various resolutions, frameworks, declarations on artificial intelligence. So the AU has a resolution that came out next year that emphasizes it's the fact that it has taken note of some of the potential impacts of AI on human rights and dignity, and that it will be working on developing policy outputs for it in Africa. But I personally don't like the AU. If you live in a country like Nigeria, for instance, you know that frameworks, resolutions, conventions that are passed by bodies like ECOWAS and the AU are routinely disregarded by the Nigerian government, Nigerian judiciary, the Nigerian legislature. So I personally feel not very, well, I don't see its import. Well, I know that there are a lot of other countries. I think there's sort of a divide in how various countries across Africa engage with the AU. And you see it's with how, policy makers and researchers from other countries seem to be way more aware and engage with international treaties and conventions compared with Nigeria, because we know that our lawmakers and judiciary here routinely disregard them. So of course, there are other African countries who that are developing national AI strategies. Ghana, I think, is working on one. I'm not sure if they've released it yet. Mauritius was the very first, and Tunisia as well. I know the Future Society was working with the Tunisian government to create a national AI strategy. And I think there are also some efforts in Kenya as well, and Egypt as well. So So there are efforts. I think in Rwanda this past week actually just launched its very first center for AI. And people were saying it was the first center for AI, innovation in Africa. But I was like, Nigeria already has a national center for AI, and it was launched last year. But well, you know how Nigerians. So they're having a couple of partnerships between, for instance, Japan and MIT on what the center will be doing, but it's more like a house for quite a number of emerging technologies, not just AI. So there's robotics there as well, and some other forms of technology. And it seems to be the case that the center is being developed to be sort of like a startup to provide startup advisory, funding, and kind of akin to an incubator in a way, rather than policy or ethics per se. So, and I read that a report by TechHive Advisory, which came out, I think, last month, also captures some of a bill. That there's a bill before the National Assembly regarding an agency for artificial intelligence in Nigeria. But if Akin will be able to provide more context on that. But basically, one of the criticisms in that report regarding that, the bill is that the bill focuses on the creation of an agency. So there are all sorts of provisions about who the chairman should be, how the board should be elected, tenure, and very little about actual AI policy and actual AI regulation. So I guess we can all make of that what we view regarding government's commitment to the import of ethics and general regulation of artificial intelligence. So how will AI impact Nigerian law, since the presence of AI is not vivid in Nigeria? I would not say that the presence of AI is not vivid in Nigeria. I mean, if you have if you're on social media, you're definitely being impacted by AI algorithms in a way. If you go on YouTube and you notice that the first couple of videos that you watch are comedy, and anytime you go, you see comedy. You're already being impacted in a way by content suggestion algorithm. So based on your preferences, your past choices, the algorithm tries to determine what sort of thing you would like. And it's not just because they like you or that Google as an organization cares so much about its users. It's actually kind of related to profit making, and how can we keep people glued to their screens, use our products more. And you see it's also in on Instagram, on TikTok as well. And the danger of that, of course, is that people can be stuck in a bubble. So an echo chamber. If somebody constantly consumes a type of content, let's say violent content, racist content, misogynistic content, and that is all that's recommended to them, then it kind of defeats the purpose of the internet as a free space, as a place where people come to share ideas, marketplace of idea about the internet, because you are not relating with opposing or points of views that are different from yours. You are just steeping yourself in the sort of ideas that you like. So there is that problem. But there is also conversely a problem that people who would prefer to create, to hide themselves away online, maybe due to whatever identity feature of their identities that they would like to keep anonymous find sometimes that they are outed, because if depending on how the algorithms work, if you watch a certain kind of content and you keep clicking, eventually somebody who creates a certain kind of content, but who doesn't want maybe personal members of their family or people they know to know about this part of their identity, eventually comes to your timeline. And so so some of these are some of the problems that are inherent in automated content moderation. It's not perfect. So and aside from social media, the truth is that we're actually not very aware of how the government is deploying artificial intelligence. There's so much that's going on that we do not know. And I say this because last month I spoke at an event on AI and human rights. And after I made my presentation, the very first person who commented, he said that he was part of a project in Kano State, and the government was looking at how, okay, I don't remember if he said the government, but I believe that there was some element of government participation because of the significance of projects they were working on. So he said they were working on a project to be able to identify crime, prevent crime before it happened. So this is the stuff of sci-fi. Like there's this anime, I don't remember the name right now, but it's sort of what you watch in movies, that the computer reads minds, prevents crime before it happens, and it sounds like such a surface level idea, or good idea. So, but he himself, the man, said that they had to abandon the project because they noticed that whenever, and Kano is a northern state, that whenever Suya men brought out their knives to cut Suya, that the system signaled an alarm that someone has brought out a knife and this person wants to kill somebody or harm somebody. So they had to abandon the project because clearly, it was not foolproof. It was error reading. It could lead to more harm than good. So this is a project that I've never read of anywhere. If you Google it, I am sure you will not find anything regarding this project. And yes, these are some of projects. I suppose we should just be thankful that maybe they did some kind of test run through which they discovered this particular anomaly. But who knows what sort of projects what other projects like this are being launched or being beta tested. And with a train crash incident from last week or 2 weeks ago, we saw the Federal Minister of Transportation. He came out to say his bit about how he had proposed the setting up of surveillance systems. The government had refused to grant the budget for the setting up of this surveillance. And now we've read in newspapers that this, the surveillance system has been set in place, has been installed across the train, the railway, the track, so that, to prevent crime, I guess. But we don't know what sort of surveillance systems have been deployed. We don't know, but I suppose it's not an unreasonable suggestion. It's not unreasonable to suspect that there might be some element of facial recognition that is that will be deployed in these systems. And then this opens up another can of worms regarding, accuracy in these systems. AI algorithmic systems, facial recognition systems that have been developed in the US and notoriously poor at identifying the faces of Black people. And when it comes to Black women, researchers have said that the ability of the algorithm to tell apart a Black woman from a Black man is a coin toss, basically 50-50. So, so you tell me what the potential ramifications for that might be, and if AI is not vivid in Nigeria. So I think personally that there are significant ramifications. And Akin wrote an article on LinkedIn about the impact of the deployment of automated decision-making systems in such spaces as, hiring, employment across the Nigerian civil service. If you think about the federal character system that we have in Nigeria, and how the systems could be deployed, and the impact of bias on vulnerable minority groups, and even groups that you would not consider minority, but which are minoritized, for instance. And there are significant ramifications: human rights to dignity, your right to not be discriminated against, your right to know that your data is being processed by an automated system. These are some of the questions that lawyers in Nigeria, legal researchers need to be aware of and need to be ready to, to litigate for or against. And I personally I don't believe very much in the Nigerian legal system. It's part of why I'm not a practicing lawyer, but I know that there is a UK law firm, Foxglove, that has that has concerted a lot of efforts into litigating some of these issues, like issues surrounding, for instance, the UK streaming algorithm. You might be surprised that part of why your visa is being rejected to certain countries is because an AI system somewhere has flagged you as high risk. And how demeaning is that your rights to travel is not even being attended to, your application to travel is not even being attended to by another human being, but by a machine somewhere. So these are some of the impacts on Nigerian law that we ought to bear in mind. And of course, deliberation. I don't know what deliberation here means, but I think it could be related to maybe deployment or development of AI on Africa as one. And I already mentioned some of that. We need to begin to think about where the fault lines are in our society. We need to think about, in America, when it comes to the American system, they have a lot to talk about regarding race and capitalist exploitation. But in Nigeria, we need to think beyond race because we are a majority African country. So we need to think about stuff like ethnicity, for instance, ethnic violence, long-held historical tensions between tribes and communities. We need to think about police violence that is not, predicated on race, but it's predicated on class and sex and ethnicity. We need to think about the impact of violence against women, gender-based violence. We need to think about violence against sexual minorities. We need to think about issues that are unique to us. We need to think about, religious extremism, for instance. These are some of the issues that we need to think about. And this is my personal opinion that the key to developing a viable AI ethics strategy and framework in Africa is by discovering our unique, where social injustices are predicated on in our own context, and then begin to build safeguards around this right. We need to let minority groups have a voice in determining exactly how this how they'll be affected by AI. And then regarding, the continuous error made by AI in the performance of their duties, how effective can we say AI ethics? Well, AI ethics are very flexible, and that's their, not flexible. They are not binding, and that is the flexibility is a strength, but the non-bindingness of it is the problem. So any company anywhere can say that they've adopted some ethical framework and still go against it. It's not a law, it's not a legislation, it's not a statute. So I mean, how, so that's definitely the problem regarding regarding ethics. And then there's also if you've read about the dismissal of Timnit Gebru by Google, you'd see that she said that there had been some problems in the fact that she had declined to highlight Google's work, to emphasize Google's work related to the climate impact, like the positive impact, the positive impact of their work on the climate, carbon emissions and all that. And she was more critical of the failures of the biases embedded in the work Google was doing in their research. And Google felt that there was a conflict. This was their ethical lead at Google, who was fired for highlighting an ethical problem. So that's clearly a problem. And then they also fired the other co-lead, and some other members of the team have subsequently resigned. So you could say that AI ethics are only as effective as, as the commitment of the organizations in which they are adopted to uphold them, really. And there's also, the fact that morality is relative. And I don't like saying that. I think that globally, there are so many things we can agree on. Murder is bad, lying is bad, but there are some other subtler, nuanced conversations, certain things that different communities believe are moral or immoral, and that's probably some of the failings of AI ethics as a means of regulation. But this is itself not, of course, disconnected from the fact that ordinary laws and legislations would also have some of these failings as well. And then for the final question related to AI ethics and machine supervision, I don't have a technical background in AI, but I try to read a lot about some of these issues, and I've come to understand that the one of the basic distinctions between supervised learning and unsupervised learning is definitely the use of labeled data sets. And there's an excellent article written by Abiba Berani on I think the article is titled, I opened it up, large data sets, a Pyrrhic queen for computer vision. So Kelly already actually mentioned some of the problems there, and Matt did as well. If you label your data sets with certain words, for instance, you use certain slurs to describe people from certain from certain races. You use certain slurs to describe women or men, and then when you are training your computer, you're trying to deploy it in a computer vision framework or something like that, and then you begin to wonder why people search monkey or ape and Black people are coming up. I don't think there is any question as to why that is happening. And it's not that supervised learning is what is causing the problem, although computer algorithms themselves have some element of bias. They're problematic in the sense that they cannot learn by themselves. They are they're just machines. They don't know what is right or wrong. They are just being fed with this information, and that is a problem. But these data sets, their creation, the environment in which they are made, the people who have access or who had access in the past to curate them, to create them, to label them, and the sort of people whose data were readily available, for instance, also affects the output. So I was talking about, the accuracy in distinguishing between male and female faces or features. And I've read that data sets like this that were, and algorithmic processing systems that were developed in Asia, for instance, are better at identifying or telling the difference between the features of Asians. So of course, there's that problem that maybe if we ourselves have been involved in the development of these systems, then they would be more accurate. But as it is, we did not develop them, and we can only take up the reins by ourselves, take up the initiative like projects like Masakane to develop our own African AI futures, to begin to build stuff for ourselves by ourselves. And this is important because there's a point I was just, yes. And this is a funny example that I want to share. So you remember part of why we all know that Techno phones and Infinix phones are very commonly used in Nigeria as opposed to Apple and Samsung. And apart from the fact that they were cheaper when they first came, part of why they were part of the drivers behind their adoption was that you could simply take better pictures with them. And you'd find that if you are taking a picture with some of those old Samsung phones, your face will be white and grainy, like as if they photocopied your face, as if you put your face in a photocopying machine and it was photocopied or something. But and this was because, of course, Samsung is, you know, a Korean company. Some of these products were developed to be able to better capture the faces of white people, not Black people like me. So part of why, but and Transsion, the company that owns Infinix and Techno, saw that as a gap. They saw that their users wanted cheap phones that could take lovely pictures in the dark, and they developed their products to be able to reflect those values. So it's sort of that same reasoning behind why we need to take charge regarding you know, AI ethics and some of whether it's machine learning, supervised learning, unsupervised learning. And what I want to say about unsupervised learning, there is definitely a problem surrounding unsupervised learning and AI hype, because, and a prominent example was during the COVID-19 pandemic. So there have been several articles that have been written about how AI failed spectacularly in, you know, providing us with a cure, a vaccine. A lot of the vaccines that have come out have built on past research by human beings, not machines. And one of the most spectacular failures of AI in its deployment during the COVID-19 pandemic was how it sort of associated a higher risk for was it a higher risk or you know, the calculation regarding how well equipped a hospital was to be able to handle COVID patients, and it's linked that with the type of paper used in a hospital. Like, there is clearly no relationship between the sort of paper, the sort of materials used in filing, and COVID risk. But unsupervised learning is used to find or identify patterns, and AI failed spectacularly at that because there was just that information was useless. Maybe there's some pattern. Maybe for some reason, hospitals that did not have the resources, maybe it was because they used lower quality paper or something. But it's not because of that paper. You know, correlation is not causation. How do they say it? Causation is not correlation. So that's some of that's about unsupervised learning. And I finally, I remembered the points that I wanted to make regarding, I think it was Shola's presentation, the second one. The point about a good and ethical AI framework being neutral. I think that neutrality is a very loaded word, and that and it's not a word that I would use to describe anything related to technology, because AI systems are built by human beings, and human beings are biased, and essentially what we build reflects our notions and ideas and feelings about our status and the status of others in the world. Excuse me. So I don't know if it is possible to build a neutral AI or have a neutral AI AI framework. And I think that to even assume that any of those things are neutral is problematic. But I think that we can strive to build AI that is beneficial for people, that is responsible, that helps, the most vulnerable, the minority groups of people, that does the most good for the most people. Thank you. That's what I want to say.
Thank you very much, Favor, for touching all the questions and for explaining them excellently well. We have overshot our time, but before we end, it would be good that we also hear from Akin. So he would be helping to, so if there's any gap that you think you need to add, please.
Okay, yeah, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I will just try to, most of the mentors have already spoken on most of the issues, so I will just try to fill in the gaps here and there. So yes, like Favor rightly said, the AU doesn't really do much as regards to AI. So what we have, we have something similar to like an AI agency for the entire continent, which was launched February of this year. It was set up by the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa in collaboration with International Telecommunications Union. They set it up in Congo, Brazzaville. It's called the African Artificial Intelligence Research Center. So just in February of this year, so it's too early to say what its impact will be for the continent. So that's just for that. And how would AI affect the future of Africa as a whole? I'll try to focus this to Nigeria because that's where I am, so I can speak a lot more about Nigeria. And there was something that I think Favor also mentioned about ubiquity of AI applications in Nigeria. Now, I'm involved in 2 projects at work. One of them in collaboration with Favor, where I've been looking at several AI use cases in Nigeria. And as much as there are a lot of local AI use cases in Nigeria that many of us are not aware of, because in some cases, some of them are like B2B. They are not necessarily customer or user facing, they are facing other businesses. But I think one issue that I have personally discovered, and I think I should point out, is the issue of fake AI or snake oil in that sense. And I won't mention the name of the company, it's a startup that got funding like 2 years ago in Nigeria. They say they use natural language processing for what they are doing. It's like you want to, like the way you search on Google, you want to search for intellectual property, you type it in Google search results and it brings you results related to IP. So they have a product like that you type what you want and then it's supposed to give you results. And they claim to use natural language processing. But I had reason to test it a few days ago and I saw that this is not natural language processing. Now, someone who does not know what natural language processing or what it means would just feel, oh, they said they use AI. They say they use AI on their websites, on their brochure, whatever they do, you will fall for it. But someone who understands what natural language processing means, rather that this is not NLP, this is just simple keyword search that they are doing here. There's nothing natural language processing about what they are doing. So it's something that it's not yet a big issue, but it's something that law can step in to safeguard in Nigeria and Africa, but there's a possibility of a lot of want to take advantage of the lack of awareness to sell a lot of products that they call AI, but are actually not AI anymore, or are just too low to be considered AI. So that's something that law can tackle. And then like what Favor mentioned about the bill before the National Assembly. So there's a bill before the National Assembly which seeks to set up like an AI regulatory agency. And like I worked on that report for State of Tech Policy Report. I shared the link in the chat box. The report says it all. This bill only seeks to set up like a bureaucracy around AI in Nigeria. who should be the chairman, who should be the DG, who is qualified, but it doesn't say anything about what should AI in Nigeria really focus on. So when it comes to AI policy in Nigeria, it's there. We say that when it comes to the government side of AI policy in Nigeria, there's basically some form of confusion. Because on one hand, like Favor mentioned, we had the national standard that was set up last year, and then they are bringing a law to set up another agency. There's like the same trend of duplicating efforts in different for the same thing. Then I will just jump to the one about relationship between AI ethics and supervised learning or machine supervision. So the other mentors have talked on this a lot. So I'll just bring out another angle that wasn't touched a lot. So like I would agree with Matt on this. The issue here is not really AI ethics. I think the issue here for me has to do with bias and privacy. And I'll explain. Starting from what Favor talked about of how you label data sets. So let's say I have this model now. It's built on supervised learning. I want to train it to recognize tigers. As we all know, tigers are, would I say, like a bit of yellow, orange, and they are striped with black stripes on their body. That's how a tiger looks like. So I give it, let's say, 1,000 images of tigers in the jungle with stripes on their body and like that. So it can recognize a tiger. And I'll bring it to the real world. Okay, I want you to recognize tigers in the real world. And there happens to be this dog, a golden retriever. Sorry, this dog is a golden retriever. And he has that, like golden retrievers, those dogs have like kind of a shiny body on them. And then this dog happens to be lying down next to a gate. Those gates that have like made out of iron bars. And because it's a sunny day, the lines of the gate are reflecting on the body of the dog, if you can get what I'm trying to explain. So it's a sunny day and the lines are reflecting on the body of the dog. So the dog looks as if the dog has stripes. Meanwhile, it's just the shadow of that gate reflecting on the dog. Now, my model then looks at this dog and then misclassifies it as a tiger because of the part shiny body and then the so-called stripes on the dog, which are just shadow reflection of the sun on the dog. Now, this thing is actually an actual example that actually happened. So this is an example. This is like the limitation of supervised learning. It is restricted to the data set you give it, how comprehensive and how well labeled those data sets are. So you can bring it to the real world. A human being will look at that dog and this is a dog, this is not a tiger. But it will look at that dog because of this shadow on it and misclassified as a tiger. That's not an ethics issue. That is an issue of inadequate data sets or mislabeling of data sets. That's one. Oh, thank you for sharing the link to it. Then the next thing is the privacy issue. Now, let's say, okay, I brought this model to the real world and I've seen that it is it's not so accurate. But if I want to make it a bit more accurate, maybe if I can get more data, more images of, let me not use tiger now. Let's say, I think earlier when I was speaking, I gave an example of a credit assessment. Let me use that one. So let's say I have this model now, and out of every 10 people who apply for loans using this system, 7 of them get loans, 3 of them are rejected. And in most cases, those 3 people who are rejected, at least one of them is actually eligible, but the model is not so accurate to be able to give accurate results for that person. So my model in this case is just, let's say, 70%, or let's say it's 90% accurate in that sense. It has a 90% accuracy, and it is built on, let's say, 100,000 data points. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, so like I was saying, so let's say my model has a 90% accuracy, and it is built on 100,000 data points, and I want to improve its accuracy. And I realized, okay, if I can get 200,000 more data points, push say 94%. So this looks like, from a business person, this looks like, oh, add it to this model 35. It sounds good. It sounds good for business. But on the other hand, I'm exposing myself on the privacy side, because collecting more data means I'm putting my security at a lot more risk. There's the cybersecurity issues. There's storing this data well. There's the issue of anonymity with how well anonymity, and also issues of data minimization. So where you should not take more data than you need to achieve a purpose. If you already have a model that achieves 90% accuracy with 100,000 data points, taking 200,000 more just to push it up 4 points looks really disproportionate. So the issue with data sets and supervising, like I just to reiterate, is more an issue that has to do with privacy in terms of the data sets you are using, how you handle them, and also the issue of, let's say, how do data sets, labeling those data sets. Ethics is not the most biggest thing when it comes to supervised learning. So I think that's all for me, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to everyone here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Akin. And so we're going to be rounding up for today. I want to say a very, very big thank you to the mentees. Thank you for staying. Thank you for learning. So I would like everyone to, if you can, put your videos on so that we can take a picture, because I want the mentees to post it on LinkedIn and tag your mentors. Post it on LinkedIn and tag your mentors. So please take a picture of the session, post it on LinkedIn, write what you learned, and thank your mentors. Okay, so let's take the pose. All right, thank you very much, everyone. This has been an amazing session. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Favor. Thank you, Akin. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, everyone. Have an amazing weekend. And for those who are Christians, happy Easter Friday. Thank you all. Take care. Bye. Love you all.